This is Breaking Bread with the Chief, presented by the Best in Blue podcast and the Memphis Police Department. When we break bread, it's an act of closeness and openness. We gather around the table to shed our armor and lighten our load, even if it's just for a little while. Chief CJ Davis hosts a series of kitchen table-style conversations at locally owned restaurants with an assortment of our city's influencers and leaders who provide valuable insight into what's really going on and what folks are thinking. We're breaking bread to break down barriers.
Welcome to Breaking Bread with the Chief, presented by Best in Blue and the Memphis Police Department. I'm your host, Chief CJ Davis. This is part of my conversations with my community. I'm talking to some of our most beloved and respected Memphians about how we can collaboratively move our city and our department forward. Today, we're continuing our conversation around crime, but addressing some of the misconceptions, questions, and concerns of the community and its leadership. So let me introduce our lunch guests, Ben Adams, Chairman Emeritus at Baker Donaldson, as well as Chair of Memphis Shelby County Crime Commission. Thank you, Ben, for being here.
Thank you.
Jerald Trotter, everyone knows Jerald's face, founder of the nonprofit Saving Absalom, and the personality behind the infamous "Don't Lose Your Head" commercials. Yes, use your head, don't lose your head, right, Jerald?
Yes, ma'am.
And Attorney Van Turner, partner at Turner and Field Law Firm, and former Shelby County Commission Chair. So glad to have you here, Van, as well. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to share a meal and this very vital conversation with me. Today, we're in Whitehaven. We're at Eggxactly Breakfast and Deli. Adrena and Wendell Jackson are the husband and wife ownership team here. Tell our audience a little bit about what's on the menu and about the restaurant itself. Welcome, Adrena and Wendell.
Well, we are Eggxactly Breakfast and Deli. We were founded October the 8th, 2019. This all started because of my background. I have a restaurant/grocery store background. My father purchased Jackson's Grocery, 1940 Warren, back in 1966, and we just recently closed 2015. And I've been raised from childhood on cooking. My passion is cooking. So after this was my first house, then it turned into a beauty shop. Then from a beauty shop to a beauty and barber shop. So I told everybody that was working here that I wanted to go back doing what I love to do, and that was cooking. Gave them about a month to get themselves together. Then when they leave, I gutted it out, and here we have Eggxactly Breakfast and Deli.
So what are we eating today?
Today we're eating Eggxactly Southern fried catfish with our signature Gouda grits and toast. And they've already devoured
That's
our
right. It's delicious.
our pork bacon, turkey bacon, scrambled eggs, and hash.
Okay, awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
And the food is delicious.
Appreciate you all.
Thank you
Appreciate you
both very much. This is a wonderful, very quaint restaurant and a wonderful addition to the Whitehaven community.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Thank you.
We encourage everybody to come by and take part in some of this wonderful food. I'm going to steal some recipes if I get an opportunity.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you, Adrena and Wendell. We'll take a quick break and come right back with Van Turner.
Before we leave, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
that's
We have
right.
a present for you, Devin.
Please tell me it's some of this wonderful hot sauce. Because I said I'm going to have to buy some of this wonderful hot sauce.
That as well. Come on round, Devin. All right. Our head executive chef has something for you.
Awesome.
All right.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you.
And-
Oh, and I get some hot sauce.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you, man. You got the cup.
Thank you. I feel
Appreciate
like
it.
a real Memphian now.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate you all.
Thank
All right.
you.
All right.
Awesome. So we're going to take a break and come right back with Van Turner, Jerald Trotter, and Ben Adams. This is Breaking Bread with the Chief.
A new era in public safety begins with you. Be the change you want to see. Join the Memphis Police Department. Salary starts at $54,611, increasing to $72,000 after 3 years. Incentives include pension, health, vision, dental, and life insurance, 25-year retirement, take-home cars, over 75 specialized units. For more information or details, visit joinmpd.com.
Welcome back to Breaking Bread with the Chief. As usual, there is so much to talk about. As I mentioned before, this is an extension of our previous conversations on crime in the city. We want to answer any questions, address any concerns, and perhaps dispel myths, because there's always myths about what's happening in our city. This is an opportunity, an open conversation, so I want all of my guests here to give me some feedback, follow up, and ask your own questions. I'm here as a guide, but I really am interested in listening and to absorb what you have to say as well. So don't treat this like it's a Q&A and interrogation, because it's not. So we want to have open conversations so our listeners will have an opportunity to really hear about what's happening in the city. So let's start with the first question. And our first question is really, Memphis has been in the news quite a bit, you know, about recent crime. Some of it is juvenile crime. Sometimes, you know, incidents that occur, we hear about them on the national stage as well. But I will say that our city is no different than other cities that are experiencing anomalies as it relates to juvenile crime and guns. So what is something positive that people should know about Memphis? And I can respond to that, but you all are from Memphis and have been here longer than I have. I'm trying to be a Memphian, but I didn't go to Central, I didn't go to Melrose, and I didn't go to Booker T. Washington. So I'm trying to figure out if I can just kind of fake it until I become a Memphian. So tell me about some things about Memphis that really makes us unique.
What makes me proud of this city, especially in the face of all this crime that we're dealing with and all the bad publicity, is the outpouring of volunteers to do nonprofit organizations, mentoring,
Yes.
working with the kids. I mean, hundreds of people have come out
Yes.
since these numbers have risen to represent our city and to make our city we want to be. I'm proud of that.
Absolutely.
The way we stood up.
Absolutely. And we hear more and more that people want to get involved, because when crime gets closer to your neighborhood or your front door, you know, you realize that it's not just certain parts of the city that are impacted. The whole city is impacted. I remember back in the day, you know, in communities that I grew up in, crime was normally relegated to certain areas.
Yeah.
You know, most of the time they were African American or impoverished communities, and now there are no lines of demarcation with crime. It's you know, wherever the opportunity is.
It is.
So Van or Ben, you all want to chime in?
You know, I can't just give one thing for a question like that.
Yeah.
There's so many things. And apart from the crime and the related things that we'll talk about, I would say this is the very best time to be in Memphis in my adult life. And why do I say that? We have more people working than even before the pandemic. We have more good jobs available than we have skilled people to do them. And we have more jobs like that coming with Louisville City, with the Marshall County plant. You know, think about the amenities that have come online the last couple of years, from the airport and the convention center and Tom Lee Park and the Leftwich Tenant Center and the youth sports complex, the Memphis Art Museum that's being built right now. Then you think about, you know, the possible development downtown with 100 North Main and the Sterrett Building. Those are like little cities, like Crosstown being redone if they get redone. Then you've got Universal Pre-K, and you've got this whole citywide fiber initiative. So I'm very bullish on what's going on in Memphis.
Yeah. Well, and those are some wonderful attributes that I've had an opportunity to experience. And when people that I know come to Memphis and they visit, I can't get them out of my house. They love the city. They don't pay attention very much. They know that, you know, we have our issues like other cities, but they love, you know, the culture here, the history here, you know, all of the wonderful things that are happening. And Memphis has a lot to be proud of. So, Van, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the resilience of our young people, so much of what we hear nowadays is bad as it relates to our young people. But if you think about it, and I have 3 young ones myself, they've gone through something that we've never experienced in our lifetime. And that was the pandemic.
The pandemic.
So, you know, and I could not have imagined what it would have been like if this was my childhood in the 90s, 80s and 90s. And you see what they've been able to accomplish and how they've been able to be so resilient. For a whole year and a half, they were not in school. They were in front of a screen every day.
Right.
They were not socializing with other young people. Athletics were cut out. And so much of what we value and cherish about childhood was taken away. No proms, no school activities, all wiped out. And yet our young people were still able to rebound and be resilient and do well, exceptionally well, in light of all what has taken place. They had National Signing Day a couple of days ago. Many of our young people are going to great schools and they're doing great things. And I don't think we congratulate and really emphasize what they've had to go through and how they've been able to be so
Still
resilient
excel.
enough.
That's great.
Absolutely.
And next
Yeah.
time, Chief, just tell everyone you went to Whitehaven and that'll shut everybody up. It's a proud
I didn't have that
Whitehaven
one on the
Tiger.
list. Okay.
Put that on the
Whitehaven.
list. Whitehaven
Whitehaven.
Tiger. We in Whitehaven.
Okay.
So, yes,
Well, you
ma'am.
know, I went to North Atlanta High School. We were Tigers there.
Well,
So I can say
hey,
Whitehaven
you can
Tiger.
say you a Tiger.
I'll
Tiger.
do that. I'll do that.
Let's
That's
let's not forget the barbecue in Memphis.
Oh, yeah,
As
you're
long as we talk
absolutely
about
right.
attributes of Memphis, we got the best barbecue.
Yeah,
in the
that's
world.
where those 8 pounds came from. I
Oh,
was
yeah.
talking about earlier, but I got rid of those 8 pounds. But it was the barbecue, and you know, I tell people hands down, Memphis got the best barbecue.
Hands down.
Hands down.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not even close.
It's not. To me, it's not. And I've had all kinds of barbecue in different cities and everything, but Memphis has a lot to be proud of on the culinary front. That's for sure. So let me ask you this. What do you think about the future of Memphis? We talked a little bit about the various, you know, attributes that our city has to offer. So how do we move forward, even though we know we have crime issues, we know we have poverty issues, we know we still have communities that are distressed communities. How do we move forward and really think in terms of, and I call it a holistic approach. That's the only way that I can talk about crime is from a holistic approach. It can't be just that the police department is running after people all the time. So what do we need to do in the future? And this isn't to put anybody on the spot, but from a realistic standpoint, what can we achieve if we all just take a role in what the future looks like for Memphis in reducing crime? Not all at once.
Well, as far as with I'll get to the police, the law enforcement in a second, but just I'd like to see, and I don't know if this is a little off subject, but I'd like to see a more equitable division of wealth when it comes to Memphis. Because I think that's where the crime comes from. I think the crime comes from wealth being held in one community and not shared with another. So that community ends up trying to steal from the other community. And it's just going to keep on reverberating itself until we fix it. So when big contracts for construction come here, I'd like to see not only white guys out there with their guys, but black guys and Hispanic guys and whoever else, and women as well. Because that's wealth that comes to this city that must be shared if we're going to prosper.
So I'll respond to that because this isn't really about law enforcement or anything. It's about a concept that I've seen in other cities that seems to be working. When big business comes to your city and they're negotiating deals, part of the deal is that you have to ensure that you're employing and creating opportunities, whether it's through training and various types of skill sets and helping people to learn how to work on a vehicle or help and that's part of the deal.
That's part of the deal.
Because the community needs to be a part of economic development in the city. So I think there's some opportunities there, but I think you hit it on the head too. We often don't talk about the socioeconomic kinds of implications in communities that keep certain, demographics from being able to do well. And it's not that they don't, because kids aren't born criminals.
Right.
They're just not.
No.
Kids will be what they see. They're products of their environment. And when opportunities aren't there, then it's no telling. We have some Cinderella stories where some kids make it out, but that's not,
That's not the norm.
That's not the norm. So I'm interested just to kind of hear.
Well, I mentioned that we've got a lot more available jobs for high-skilled workers than we've got
Yes.
trained workers.
Yes.
And so we really need much more robust training programs, not only for kids, but for adults.
Absolutely.
And that starts in the schools. You know, we used to have a lot more technical training in our schools than we do now. We've put all this emphasis on everybody going to college.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't geared to go to
Go to
college,
college.
and they
Not for
go and they
That's
don't
right.
graduate.
That's right.
And so we've put all this emphasis on free college, free
Yeah.
community college, but we're not graduating enough of the people. And instead, we need to skill them up.
Develop
Because there are really
skill
some
sets.
good jobs in the construction, the
Yeah.
manufacturing, logistics areas, medical device
And those things are
manufacturing.
needed.
They
Right.
really are needed,
Right.
and they pay well.
Right.
And you know, we've got to skill people up.
I agree with that. Back in the day, we used to have, I said it to you, but you weren't back in the day with me. You're younger than I am. But we used to have vocational kinds of, classes where we had machine shop, we had wood shop, we had opportunities for young people to learn domestic kinds of, sewing and all kinds of other, natural skills that young people were very interested in and became, were able to go and get jobs, later on because everybody can't, go to college or may
Colleges are
not
for
even want
everybody.
to.
It's not for everybody.
It's not.
No, you
it's
have
not.
to have people to build houses.
Yeah.
You have to have people to put together cars. I mean,
Right.
everybody can't be an accountant. Everybody can't be a lawyer or a
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah. Well, and of course, that's not within, my lane, but I think that as we have broader conversations, maybe our school systems will start to think even more about how do we get our young people ready for what's next after the 12th grade. Is it that they're handoffs to Blue Oval and places that might have apprentice, opportunities for our young people to learn, even while they're in high school, 11th and 12th grade, learning how can I get a job at Blue Oval
Right.
without a college education, and there may be some opportunities there.
Yeah.
Yep. You got anything
Well,
there?
the economy is changing. AI is upon us. So much of what we are used to now will be different.
Yeah.
5-10 years from now. West Tennessee will change. As you mentioned, Blue Oval will change
That's
this
true.
area of the state. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunity, a lot of growth between here and Stanton, Tennessee. You have Galloway, which is in between Memphis and Stanton. They just got a Buc-ee's, which is a national
Oh, yeah.
brand.
Yeah.
And
I just learned about
you
Buc-ee's.
Buc-ee's is
I was like,
something.
Buc-ee's.
It's a whole culture. with
Right.
Buc-ee's,
It
right?
is. It
So,
really is.
you just have so much, and I'd like to shout out Emeka Ekewekwe, who has the Code Crew,
Yeah.
and
Doing
those
great.
are
Kids
solutions
learn how to do
code.
code.
Yes.
Yeah.
from
Okay.
a young age,
Okay.
and then those are the ready-made
Right,
jobs when they
right,
graduate.
right.
No need to go to college.
Right.
If you can code, you can go to work immediately when you
That's
walk across the graduation
Mhm.
stage. And like you said, leaning into those opportunities with Blue Oval, that's where I think we need to align with the school system and make sure that those opportunities are there.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Code Crew is a great example,
Yeah.
but that's just in the IT area.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We need 10 types of code crews, just
Right.
like that in the other areas.
Right. Right.
They do great work.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us. I would love to get the information for that particular program because we have young people that we encounter, and some of them really do want to do something else. They'll sit and tell you, I'm doing this because my mother doesn't have money for me to get to school every day or for me to eat. We have young people that are breaking into schools at nighttime and they're not stealing computers or cell phones. They're stealing bread. They're stealing cheese.
Wow.
And when you go straight to the cafeteria, you ignore all of the other classrooms where you could have picked up something. Then the mentality is not really about stealing something. It's about survival.
hungry.
They're hungry. And we see that more times than not. People are surprised when we have a burglary and we go in and we find out they just raided the refrigerator.
Wow.
So those are some things that really, bring the reality home that we've got some underlying root problems. So I think we might be getting ready to go to break. But before we go to break, I want to leave you all with a question to ponder. It truly does take a village, and that's kind of what we're talking about to bring up our children. And with that in mind, We can just talk about how other entities, whether they're non-governmental entities, whether they're governmental entities, how do we help partner and maybe close some of the gaps? There may be some programs out there already that we can expound upon. The Memphis Police Department was blessed to receive a grant from the state, and we will be looking at how do we partner and collaborate with other entities that are in this lane, in this public safety lane, and how do we use that grant funding in a proactive way to help support programs. So be interested in talking about it. We'll be right back in a few minutes.
Check out all your Kadzukian favorites now.
So right before the break, we talked, I gave you sort of a cliffhanger. The question was, how do we think in terms of being a village here, in our city? And that means a lot of things to different people. When I was growing up, being a village means a lady down the street had permission to beat me, or whip me, give me a spanking. And it was okay, because I got another one when I went home. Yes. So what does that mean today? And how is it, that we're a village here in this city, and there's so many people who are part of the village, and how can they plug in? I think, Ben, you had some ideas about even nonprofit organizations being able to help us with this.
Well, I guess what I'd first like to talk about are those most likely to fall through the cracks. The opportunity youth and the truants, to start with, they need to be identified better and get in some programs, figure out what's going on in their life, help them get back to school or get in some kind of training, turn life around. But the other thing is with the juveniles that commit crimes, not the real violent ones, but everything short of that. Up until now, it's been pretty much, send them home with an ankle bracelet that's not very well monitored, that doesn't work very well, and we've sent them back to the same place that spawned the problem in the first place.
Right.
We need robust services, graduated carrots and sticks. You mentioned the Pure Academy. That's just one good example. We need a whole roster of ways to motivate and have minor consequences for youth like that to try to improve their lives. I mean, we're not going to get anything done by just sending a kid home with an ankle monitor.
No, not at all.
And that takes a lot more resources
That's
than we've been putting into juveniles.
That's right. Well, with the number of young people that we encountered last year, excuse me, who were involved in various types of crime, many of them had ankle monitors on, and ankle monitors are monitored from 9 to 5 sometimes, and most of the activity is after that. So who's watching? Remember the commercial? Do you know where your child is?
Right.
Now it's nobody at home who's watching the commercial. So and it speaks volumes for what we see. And our young people are falling through the cracks. When we drive down the street and we see 6 kids at 12 noon on a Tuesday walking in a neighborhood, who's responsible for checking on those 9, 10, 11-year-olds? And I tell people all the time, the backseat of a patrol car is not the place for a child or for someone that's skipping school, because that could be a traumatic experience even for a 10-year-old. If you're just taking them back to the school, sitting in a caged vehicle can be a traumatic experience for our young people. So what does the village look like in Memphis?
The village has to encompass all kinds. You have to have teachers, you have to have principals, you have to have nonprofits like mine that go into the schools and talk to the kids and try to work with kids, mentor the kids. All of us have to wrap around these kids and let them know something. There's this thing, when you're a young man, a young black man, you're told about this job that you have in the future. And you hear about this job you have, and the job's called manhood. But you're told that you probably won't be any good at it. Nobody looks like you're that good at it. And so you determine, I'm going to be good at this. I'm going to be good at this. Problem is, the angst comes in when there's no one leading you to be good at that job. So that job is getting closer, but you haven't learned anything more about it. So what do? You get with your friends, you start listening to music, what seems like manhood lessons that are not, and you start trying to get it that way. And they wind up meeting you. And that's the problem.
Yeah. And so as we talk about the different programs that are in existence, there are a lot of hardworking, nonprofits and other government entities that are in the trenches trying to do this work. But, we had a conversation the other day. We got more than 4,000 churches, in the city. And some of our churches are doing great work. And we thought about it, if we could just identify the most at-risk kids and give one of them to each one of our churches, that they would say, I'm going to hold on to this young person, wrap my arms around this young person, and help walk them through all the different services.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some opportunities for us to sort of mobilize and use other people as a force multiplier so that, put the police department out of business. Put the police department, I think we all want safe communities. We really do.
Everyone.
We all want safe communities, but these days I'm constantly victim focused. Constantly thinking about who is the next victim. And when you have 13,000 vehicles stolen, and a lot of that was done by young people, children, some children with guns, it's just a very devastating kind of situation for us to deal with. You've got young people that sort of have run amok because they don't have the kind of governance that they need and support. And then you have people who are going to work every day and they get up and their car is gone. And some people think, oh, it was just a material thing. That car means everything to that person who has to take their children to work, that person who has to get to work themselves. Everybody doesn't have the resources to go rent a car or the insurance that's going to give them a car in the interim. And you might not get that car back in one piece. So we really think about even auto theft as a very, very serious crime in our city. But when you think about a felony and a 12-year-old who committed it, that's some friction there that we haven't had to address in the past. And it's not easy to address that. Most of the time it was adults, stealing vehicles, and we kind of deal with an adult. But when you have children and it becomes a game, and a very dangerous game, it puts us in a position where we really do need more people that are intervening with our kids.
That's right.
With truancy in the schools, and we need more work on how we bring the village together to help our young people and really, do some of the heavy lifting. So as we talk about that, we all have represented different, government or non-government entities, and how do we bring everybody together? Because if we're working in silos, I got projects, in the Memphis Police Department. There are entities in city government that have projects too. How do we bring the county and the city together? Because we all want the same thing, So, and I know you're no longer the chair. You can't speak for the commission anymore. But from your experience, how do we forge those relationships?
Yeah, I think you have to break it down, right? You can't try to do it all as one problem and think you can solve the huge problem as one problem. Each community has a different culture.
Yes.
So, Fraser is different from South Memphis. South Memphis is not Whitehaven.
Right.
And even in Whitehaven, where we are now, you have different communities. Westwood. I mean, we're in Whitehaven, but Westwood is separate from Whitehaven. You have Mitchell. That's a whole nother culture there. Obviously, Binghamton, and you get into some of the other North Memphis areas, Orange Mound. So I think you really have to go into those communities and get the leaders, the religious leaders, the community leaders, and I say the coaches.
Yes. Yeah.
And my sons both are in sports and they have a lot of admiration, as I did for my coach. And so, you know, you bring them together and you really see, okay, you got the high school coach for Whitehaven, you have the Whitehaven churches, you have basically the Whitehaven principal here, obviously to be Vincent Hunter. And, you know, let's see what we can do to really focus in on the culture and how can we save Whitehaven. Let's replicate that in Fraser. Let's do the same with Melrose and Orange Mound. And you have to, I think, really address the various cultures which are and subcultures which are within these communities. And that's how you penetrate it, because what you're doing in South Memphis won't work in North Memphis. I think that's one thing that you can look at. And parent accountability. I mean, we touched on it. We hadn't really called it out.
Right.
But, you know, I'm accountable for my children.
Right.
If my children are breaking in cars, then I bear some responsibility as a parent.
Absolutely.
I dropped the ball somewhere. In some instances, the parents are unable to be a good parent because we have challenges there. So how can we, through this system that we're talking about, enable these parents to be better parents?
Maybe have classes, mandated classes or something like that. Yeah.
And
you have to assess the whole situation.
You got to.
Before you come up with the strategy.
Absolutely.
Right. And music, I put this last point out here. Can we talk to our radio stations and TV stations and everyone in the media that touches our young people and just have a day of positivity?
Absolutely.
That'd be nice.
No music that harms and kills and talks about the destruction of the community.
Right.
We want a positive outlook when we wake up and we see the news, when we get in the car and we hear the music, and let's just have a day of positivity. Because, you know, back in the day, we had gangster music, but we also had positive rap.
We did.
And it was a balance there.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is we're talking about bringing all the partners to Memphis. And I was on the phone 2 days ago with a gentleman who's in prison. And he wasn't supposed to have a phone, but he and I were talking. I've kind of, was telling Larry about this, we've like brokered a gang truce in one of the prisons. And I was speaking with him about that. And I was telling him about the this meal that I was going to be having with you. And he wanted me to say that we should incorporate the gangs. We should incorporate the gangs in those types of wrap-around, hug-around meetings, because trying to dissuade the kid who's in a gang from being in that gang is just like me trying to tell you to no longer be a Turner.
Right.
That's their family.
That's it,
That's
right.
the identity.
And so if you have a relationship with the gangs, who are basically the fathers of these kids, the OGs, to and not just an informative, an informant type relationship, but a relationship is, what do they need?
Right.
What are they looking for? What's going on? Yeah. Because just like you can go talk to a minister and ask what his flock needs, the OG has a flock as well. And if we keep ignoring the OG and pretending he doesn't have a flock, his flock is going to come and let us know that they do exist.
Yeah, and they're not going anywhere.
No.
They're not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere.
It's generational. It's just, one group. Who's the next group?
That's it.
What are the next acronyms that we're going to be
all.
looking for out on the street? Okay, so we're talking about how do we bring the village together, and both of you hit on some very, very good points, especially about how do we identify people who identify with gangs and bringing them in and not ignore, what's obvious to us, that there are these subcultures of people in our community that for whatever reason are operating and influencing other young people to be a part. How do we bring them in? That's important. And then Van, you talked about neighborhoods. You talked about, the difference between Whitehaven and Westwood. And we've done walks in Westwood. And when I do my crime stat meetings on Mondays, these are some of the same neighborhoods, not just since I've been here, but for years, have had the same kinds of problems. So what does that application of service look like in Westwood and Binghamton and Smoky City and, all of these neighborhoods that some people have probably just come to the conclusion, it's just Westwood. It's just the way it is. And so what we're starting to do, and we came up with 14 different neighborhoods in the city of Memphis that we believe that once that data comes back, those zip codes are probably going to automatically lay over those neighborhoods. And how do we start looking at bringing resources into the neighborhoods specifically to deal with the unique problems in those neighborhoods? Is it gangs? What do we need to do to help with gangs? Is it drugs? Is it poverty? Is it truancy? Is it domestic abuse? A lot of our homicides, people don't realize. They think it's random shooting. It's not. A lot of them are people who know each other, that are in homes with each other, and the anger.
Proximity.
That's right, in proximity.
Right.
We had a homicide this past week, and it was sad because it was a child in the car that
So
got hold of the gun, and the child is the one that accidentally shot the mother in the car, which was devastating. But in the news, it sounds like it was a random homicide, and it was an accidental shooting by a child, and this child was under 5 years old. So just a very, very, very devastating. But those are the real kinds of situations that we have to deal with on a regular basis. And before I move on to the last question, Ben, did you have anything you wanted to add to what we're talking about the village?
No, I mean, we talked about but I would also remind people, for those that think we just need to lock up these young people to do something, that's just crazy. I mean, and right now, like I mentioned, we've got very little on the low end. On the bad end, we send them to places like Wilder, and that's terrible. They're not going to come back, fit to do anything.
That's right.
And so we really need robust range of options to help these kids and assess them, assess
based
their families.
on their specific needs.
And the wraparound services, the job training, the whole deal. And the family needs some of this too. I mean, like you mentioned, some of them just need some food. Some of them have health issues. Some of them have transportation issues. If you don't really dig into the whole family, you can't really help the situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the last question that I have for everyone, first of all, I will say that we have made some progress as it relates to crime in our city. And, the thing about crime in the city, sometimes the victim is the one that feels the impact of crime the most. And even if we have 2 victims, it's too much. If we have 3 homicides, it's too much. And so even though we are working to reduce the numbers of crime, we still have people impacted by crime. And so it has to be approached from a holistic standpoint. So the hot question is, you get to be chief. You get to be chief for a day. Jerald says no.
No.
And so, and I know that's something that, no one person can, have the answer for everything, but I'm certainly here to take in whatever recommendations or advice, because this really isn't just a conversation. This is more of a movement. How do we move the needle? So, Ben, you get to be chief for a day.
Well, I'll approach a slightly different angle from what you were leading into it. I would say that we need a lot more police officers because we need more investigators. We need more people out in the community that build relationships in those communities, so people in those communities are willing to talk about what's going on. We need more patrolmen on the street. So we're a long way from getting to 2,300 or 2,500. And given the way society overall is about building our police force, not only in Memphis but throughout the country, if I were you, I would be meeting with the mayor, the city council, and the union, and trying to figure out a way to reimagine how you do things. I mean, whether it's technology, whether it's outsourcing some things, whether it's more civilian roles. Civilians can investigate social media just as well as sworn officers.
Absolutely.
So I think we really need to solve more crimes and arrest more people that are the bad folks. And we need a lot of intervention services, as we've been talking about. But I don't see how we're going to have enough sworn officers to do what we need to do without thinking about it differently.
Absolutely, and because these are the signs of the times. This is a new age where there aren't enough police officers to do all of these other jobs. And we are, to your point, starting to look at how we civilianize certain positions in the police department and allow other individuals, like in our real-time crime center,
Right.
to have a wounded warrior program, retired veterans who understand intelligence and who could potentially come in, monitor cameras and those types of things, and to reallocate manpower so that we can have more officers out on the street. But to your point, you're absolutely right. We've got to use technology more, and we have to find ways to do more with less.
That's right.
Because the demand is definitely going up and the numbers of officers have stayed the same.
And, you know, police are notorious for being very reluctant to change.
Tell me.
I mean, they really are one of the most inbred groups.
That's right.
And you know, police unions lead the charge on that.
That's
and
right.
so
That's right.
we got to find a way to meet each other halfway.
Right,
And find some new ways of doing things so that we can provide more services to the public.
We have a saying that, you know, police like things two ways, or don't like things two ways, the way they are, and change. And so that's the struggle. But we do need to start investing more in root causes as opposed to just applying and responding, because we arrested 27,000 people last year in the city of Memphis. That's a lot of people. And we have just as much crime as, you know, coming into the new year.
Right.
Even though some of our Part 1 and property crimes are down, we still have homicides. We still are dealing with, you know, some of that level of violence. So arresting our way out of it is not the answer. We do have to deal with individuals that are violent, but at the same time, we have to have other ways to send people down a different track and ensure that they don't revert back to what they, you know, are accustomed to. So, Van, you get to be the chief.
Yeah.
You get to be the chief today.
Oh, Lord.
Don't worry, I'll take it back because
Yeah.
the chief gets a lot of heat.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think there are a couple of things. I'm just thinking here, maybe two things would be doing what you just touched on and really pushing a war on poverty.
Yes.
You know, we have a war
Yes.
on drugs, and we saw what happened.
Mm-hmm.
We have a war on crime, and we see it. But no one is really, I think, leaning into that root cause. You know, breaking into the school cafeteria to eat.
That's right.
You know, you telling one kid, hey, let's go and work at this company or this warehouse or this fast food joint, and you make this, but I can go and get a car or two,
That's right.
and I can feed my family for a week or two.
For a week. Mm-hmm.
It's just simple math.
Right.
And so when you strangle a community and you disinvest in that community and you take out the resources and you're not putting anything into that community, the schools are not where they need to be. The schools are actually caving in, literally. Roofs are falling in if you look at Cummins.
Wow.
You know, the toilets are not made for any human being to use, especially our young people. And so when you look at all of these things that are going on in a community, you know, 1 + 1 still equals 2. If you disinvest in the community, you give them no hope, the homes are wrecked, what you're going to have is crime.
Yeah, that's right.
And you can arrest the 27,000 and you got 27,000 more that are coming out of these environments that are just going to keep doing it because they see no path forward. So we need a war on poverty, and we need it to be funded.
That's right.
And this is coming from the chief. If you want me to solve crime and resolve crime, help me resolve and solve these root causes, whether that's the Tennessee General Assembly, Governor Bill Lee, City Council, County Commission, and the school board.
Holistic.
Yeah. And then also, you know, our young people should not be able to outgun the police.
That's
So when you're looking at our young people with the twitches, they can take
That's
a
right.
simple Glock and it can become a machine
right.
gun. They're walking around with assault weapons that only should be
In the
reserved
open.
for the battlefield.
right.
I mean, they're
That's
out
right.
with, walking,
That's right.
so
and they
That's
don't
right.
even have a
Ridiculous.
permit to have it.
that's what I'm
And
saying.
they don't have to have
No
a permit to
training.
have it. That's right.
And so, you know, I would go into the assembly and talk to Governor Bill Lee and whomever. We need something to address the proliferation of guns in our community, and especially the assault rifles, because we are endangering our officers, we're endangering the community, and they are endangering themselves.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And we put a period behind that for sure. You know, and I've said this in community forums, my gift coming to Memphis in June 2021 was the passing of permitless carry. Yeah. And so, you know, coming into a city that was basically allowing for the free, open exposure of weapons in our community, and for us to think that that was not going to have any type of detrimental effect, especially as it relates to violence in our community, you know, this isn't a fantasy world. Right. We have to know that the decisions that we make impact, you know, impoverished communities differently than they do other communities. And so we have seen more guns on the street, more Glock switches on the street, more extended magazines, and in the hands of children, which makes it even more difficult for us to navigate. I'm going to go to you, Jerald.
Okay, now
You chief for the day.
I told you I didn't want the job. Now, these people are ungrateful. It's a thankless job. But I like the idea of community policing.
Yeah. Yep.
I like the idea of the police officers walking through the community, all of the communities, and getting to meet each and every family. That allows for relationships that aren't there right now. That allows for someone to be able to tell something they know is going on without being broadcast that they did it. That just allows for more human interaction between police officers
and the community.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And community policing is one of my strong points and one principle that I've always believed in. We're in a tech kind of society now, and our young officers, they're so used to communicating on phones and riding around in cars that look like cockpits on the inside, and that's where they get their excitement from. And they've moved away from getting out of the vehicles and communicating with people. And so, and this is probably the first time I'm announcing this, but we're about to reopen the Old Allen Station. And Old Allen Station will be the first sort of resurrection of what coax used to look like in our community, community action, you know, centers. And that will be sort of like all things community policing, bringing retired officers back so that they can go out and help us in the community do more talking. And as we increase our numbers, that's why we need more people, not necessarily to be a heavy hand on the community, but to have more officers who can walk the streets and be in those spaces that we need to have officers talking to individuals at businesses, dropping in on schools and helping out with some of that work. But you're absolutely right. Community engagement is critical, but we have to invest in community engagement as much as we invest in enforcement, especially if it's a priority for us. Absolutely.
Remember those block parties, those nights out at the park?
That's right.
If we do those like
midnight basketball,
that's what we need. We need to bring all that back. So everybody can get to see everybody, and everybody can be a human to everybody.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate you all taking time out of your day. All three of you are very busy people. Stay tuned because I will be talking with more Memphians in the next episode. I'm Chief CJ Davis, and we thank you for listening and watching. And a huge thank you to our host, Restaurant Eggxactly. I want to say it right, Eggxactly, like eggs. But we're so glad that Wendell and Adrena Jackson gave us an opportunity to experience their wonderful food, and our production partner, Kazukian. Be sure to follow Best in Blue on Facebook and the Best in Blue MPD on IG for updates, content, and show drops. Again, you've been watching Breaking Bread with the Chief, presented by the Memphis Police Department and powered by Kazukian. We'll see you next time. Thank you and be safe.